I don't think it's a stretch to call this the game of the year. Tennessee is going to Athens, Georgia to play the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia is an 8.5-point favorite. This game opened at 9, so it's gone down a half point. This is, to my understanding, likely to be the highest ranked matchup ever played in Athens, Georgia. Between the hedges, everything is set up perfectly. 3:30 Eastern kickoff, right smack dab in the middle of your college football Saturday. It's going to be a beautiful thing. I said it to open the show. This is a playoff game. So you can have all the conversation you want about expanding the playoff. This is a playoff game. Tennessee coming into this game, main thing is still the main thing for them. They wanted to get to Atlanta. That's why Hendon came back. That's what Josh Heupel put in front of him when he said he was coming back. They're still just quietly confident. Business as usual. Big win last week against Kentucky at home. They said, same thing's the same thing. Business as usual. Job's not finished. Never too high, never too low. They're ready for this one. Like, I know there's a lot of conversation around Tennessee and how quickly it's come together, and it's year 2 under Josh Heupel. It doesn't make sense. I think this Tennessee program's for real, and they have a chance to prove it to the rest of the country this Saturday against the Dogs. Now, the Dogs, they got some hardware, right? They got that ring on their finger from the national championship a year ago. They're out for that SEC title. Like they're out to get that. That's what they want to get. And Kirby Smart issued a challenge to the entire crowd in Sanford Stadium and just said, basically, if you can talk the next day after this game, you didn't yell out enough. And keep in mind, this is coming from Kirby Smart. Like Kirby Smart, no nonsense, focus all on the internal, block out the external, went out of his way to ask the crowd to be a factor in this game. So you can rest assured the environment will be second to none. And like we talked about, very much a no-nonsense kind of program. They're just on that march to get back to Atlanta. And they have that sort of Saban-esque culture about them. Obviously, Kirby Smart being a Nick Saban disciple, go 1-0 every single week. But you know there's a little bit of extra juice to this game. You know there's a little bit of an extra edge that they're going to be playing with. You can say all the right things on both sides of this. You can say all the right things, just another game, another week. No, this is the game of the year. This is probably the game of both these programs, to this point at least. History in the regular season, maybe we're reaching, but we're not far off. What are the hinge points in this game? We've had over 1,000+ of you in the last few days join the program. So 1, thank you. 2, what is a hinge point? Well, it's how we break down the game. Regardless of what the outcome is, we think these hinges are kind of the determining factors to that outcome, if you're keeping up with me. So hinge point number 1 for us, who gets the push? The line of scrimmage, everyone's talking about it. We're no exception to that. Who gets the push at the line of scrimmage? Because Tennessee, they're averaging right around 4.5 yards a carry, and Kirby Smart said it right after the Florida game. He said they throw the ball so well, Tennessee does. They get those splash plays. They get Jalen Hyatt running wide open downfield. Yes, because of how they scheme it up, but also, in addition, because of how well they run it. They make you commit more guys to that run game. Same thing for Georgia. On the flip side, they're a little bit more of a pass-first kind of program. They're averaging 37 attempts a game, if you can believe it, with what Georgia does. If they can be multiple, if they can win at the point of attack and run the football on a good Tennessee run defense who's given up less than 100 yards a game on the ground, right around 3 yards a carry, that's going to allow them to change the way this game is played. Because if Georgia can be multiple, well, then in that sense, they're able to get into more of a track meet. They will have a better chance, at least, to keep pace. And that's, I think, what I want to get to. When we talk about winning the line of scrimmage, yes, it's important to momentum and the gameplay and asserting your will on the other program. But what I think it comes down to more than that is allocating resources. Because you know, if you've watched Tennessee offensive football, they scheme it up, they spread you out, and they make you commit a certain number of guys to stopping the run. So if Georgia can do that with a minimal amount of players, if they can win those one-on-one matchups and win at the point of attack and still be able to keep who they want to keep back in the secondary, that's going to limit explosive plays. That's how Georgia wants to live. Now, however, if they can't do that, and it's a matter of we got to add in a safety, we have to bring that overhang player, whether it's the outside linebacker or a roll down strong safety, we got to add them into the box. Well, that's more green grass for Tennessee. So the point of attack, the line of scrimmage, we talk about it so much because of what it translates to. Explosive plays for both programs, but especially Tennessee. So that's the first hinge point. Also worth noting, Nolan Smith, reported probably just a few hours before we got on air, is out for this season. Huge loss for that for that Georgia defensive line. He got hurt in the Florida game last week. So big loss for Georgia. We'll see how they can recover from that kind of a loss. Again, Nolan Smith not playing in this game. Second hinge point I'm looking at, Stetson Bennett is going to have an enormous role in this game. You're saying, no, duh, starting quarterback for Georgia. Of course he's going to have a big role in this game. Well, let's take it a step further. When Stetson Bennett is in the kind of crunch time situations, what do you get out of him? Do you get first half Stetson Bennett from the Florida game where he's slinging it around, he looks comfortable, he's pushing the ball downfield effectively, or do you get second half Stetson Bennett where he puts the ball in harm's way? The offense kind of sputters. You allow the other team to kind of recalibrate, get back into the game. That's going to be crucial because if he's efficient and the Georgia offense can kind of hum a little bit and score at the rate they want to score at, again, that allows them to keep pace with Tennessee. Even more so, I think it allows Georgia to throw some haymakers in this game. It allows them to bring the right hook, the left hook, and kind of pour it on and force Tennessee to then keep score with Georgia. Imagine that kind of a game playing out. Imagine Georgia gets up by a touchdown, 10 points, and Tennessee has to answer scores. Would flip the entire complexion of this game. But if you get bad Stetson Bennett, and you love him and hate him for the kind of the gunslinger mentality he can have at times, if he puts the ball in harm's way, well, then that flips back towards Tennessee. And if it becomes a track meet, again, we have our pick on this coming in just a few minutes, but if it becomes a track meet, that's going to favor Tennessee. I'm just keeping it at that. They score quickly, they score in bunches, and that's not the kind of game you want to play where you spot them, let's just say, 2 possessions. Not the kind of game you want to play if you're Georgia. Final thing I'm looking at with this whole thing, who wins the chess game? Specifically between Glenn Schumann, Will Muschamp, the kind of defensive side of things for Georgia, and then Josh Heupel. Obviously, the Tennessee offense. Because Josh Heupel, you know it and I know it, he is a Hogwarts grad when it comes to what he does drawing it up for Tennessee. Like, there's a reason they got guys running wide open downfield. There's a reason Jalen Hyatt is having the season he's having. It's because of the matchups they create and the fact they've been able to really set things up for those explosive plays. They're a step ahead a lot of the time. Now, flip the script the other way. Georgia is going to have the most team speed that Tennessee has seen yet this year. How does that impact this game? How does that impact the chess game? Because with what they do at all 3 levels, how quick they are, that's going to allow them to, I think, be more flexible schematically against Tennessee. Like, Georgia could get away with some things that other teams just can't in terms of the kind of pre-snap alignment they take, where they put their linebackers, where they put their safeties. For how quick they are, they can afford to gamble a little bit because of that talent. So does that pay dividends for Georgia and allow them to kind of confuse Tennessee? Or is Josh Heupel a step ahead yet again and able to cash in and able to kind of draw in Georgia this way and then bam, hit him with the explosive play the other way? Something to watch for. The game within the game, to me, is fascinating. Again, between Josh Heupel and the defensive side of things for Georgia with Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann. The X factor, I think it goes without saying, for Georgia offensively, Brock Bowers. If Brock Bowers can kind of have the impact he had a week ago against Florida in this Tennessee game, that's the kind of the situation you'd like to avoid if you're Tennessee. So how do you match up with him? Do you match up with him? Is it by committee? Because this Tennessee secondary is coming off their best game of the season, making Will Levis, who is projected to be a first-round quarterback, they made him look like a 7th-round undrafted free agent kind of guy. Again, I'm not a draft guy. I'm just saying that was the kind of performance they forced Will Levis into having for a Tennessee secondary that's had a lot of criticism directed their way, whether it's fair or not. So let's get to the good stuff. Our prediction for this game. Tennessee hasn't scored less than 34 all season long. Georgia is the reigning defending champions. They've been there, they've done that. They got Kirby Smart, they got Stetson Bennett. They have experience on their side on that side of things, right? Now, the defense is extremely talented, elite in some sense, but they're still, it feels like to me at least, getting their sea legs completely. And that's probably a first world problem for Georgia because they're still one of the best defenses in the country when it comes to points per game. So that's going to be a matchup to watch. Here's what it comes down to for me. I am not a Stetson Bennett hater. I am farthest thing from it. I was previously. I was converted after they won the national title. They can win with Stetson Bennett. However, with this Georgia program, I have seen on multiple occasions kind of a stop-start mentality. They get rolling and they kind of sputter and then they get going. And I've seen different personas from this Georgia program. In short, I've seen some inconsistency. From Tennessee, I've just seen them put their foot down on the gas pedal, continue to roll, and what it comes down to at the end of the day, we're just going to trust our eyes. I think it's a shootout. I think the environment is absolutely bonkers. I think we have an absolute classic, and you may get some Chase McGrath magic here at the end of it yet again. I think the Vols win this one in Athens, 41-38. The Vols get it done in the game of the year. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.